You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level. Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacalyn.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Business Talk Radio. I am your host, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm also the executive producer, director, and broadcast engineer. You're watching A Better You. Lessons from the best coaches, consultants, and trusted advisors. I have hand-selected a team of people from around the world who come and join us 7 times a week to present lessons to help make us better personally and professionally. Let me share how this will work. We have 2 of our team members, 2 experts who are backstage and dying to get out here and present their lesson. They will each have 15 minutes to present. And then after the presentation, I and the other presenter who didn't just present will have a conversation about what was just presented. We're looking forward to the show. Joining us today, 2 of our team members, Dylan, James, Levitt, and Hyatt Ives. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
It's good to see you both. Dylan, the first time that you're here today presenting on this stage. You've been on our programs before, but this is very exciting. How do you feel?
I'm feeling very excited because this presentation is one that I'm actually going to be giving at a workshop I'm doing in a month. So you gave me the chance to prepare it early and to practice it, and I appreciate that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So you are the founder of S.P.A.R.K Coaching. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So S.P.A.R.K Coaching Services is, I'm a dating and relationship coach, and S.P.A.R.K is an acronym. It stands for self, purpose, attraction, relationships, and kingdom. And in my dating and relationship coaching, really what I do is I take people through the process of discovering more about themselves, more about their purpose, more about attraction and how to spark it, more about relationships and how to build healthy, satisfying, stable relationships. And then kingdom is really about building a life together. So I'm super passionate about relationships, and I do my best to give people the tools to create loving, lasting, and healthy relationships.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Dylan. Can you also talk to us a little bit about the work you're doing over on Clubhouse?
Yes. So I'm giving people on Clubhouse, I feel like I'm kind of going like undercover coaching on Clubhouse. I do rooms once a week, and the topics change. But last week we talked about how to bring relationship education into the education system, because my background was someone who I felt like I just never got educated on how to create connections. And specifically when it came to women and dating, I was completely like a fish out of the water. I never knew how to go about approaching a woman or asking her out or when to make my move. And I had to seek that education out on my own. I learned from a bunch of people online, and then it was so valuable that I became one of those people. And Clubhouse is one of the platforms that I go on to help spread the love.
I love it. That's fantastic. Thank you. And your face, like, talk about it. So that's a great sign that you're passionate about it. Thank you for being here. And Mr. Hyatt Ives, once again, back with us. You were here yesterday please share a little bit about everything you're doing in the trade show space, as well as in helping people speak properly.
Well, we'll start with that because that came first. I am the author of That Ain't Not Right, The Use and Abuse of the English Language. And I put out a weekly That Ain't Not Right missive on the use and abuse of the English language. And I've been doing that for 5 years. And I have people coming up to me that I've never met, have never seen, and say, "Oh, I really enjoy your weekly missives." And it goes everything from quotes to how to use various parts of speech. And then my other love is business to business trade shows. And I have a book there, 88 Successful Event Strategies. And today's presentation is going to be the 5th in a series of how to resurrect live trade shows, which of course have been dormant for 18 months. And next Tuesday and Wednesday, I will be taking a client to our first live trade show this year. And I have done 4 sessions on before, during, and after trade shows from 30,000 feet, and then before, the during, and the after at 15,000, and then how audiences are reacting. And today we'll be looking at the after show at 15,000 feet. So those are the 2 areas that I've been playing in right now.
Thank you so much, Hyatt. Very exciting, especially as everybody starts to get back and go to conventions and conferences. And we need to remember how to show up and really make an impact and create excitement and get people to know who we are and want to do business with us. So I'm just going to let our audience know the way that this is going to work once again is Mr. Hyatt Ives has agreed to go first. He's going to do his presentation. Dylan and I will be backstage listening intently. And then after Hyatt's finished, Dylan and I will come back. We'll give some comments about the presentation. We'll go to commercial break. Then Dylan will present. And then Hyatt and I will discuss with Dylan about his presentation. How's that sound, gentlemen?
Fine. My screen says that you've got my deck.
I have your presentation. I think you want to turn it to the first. I think we see some other things on there. Just make it in slideshow format. Okay, I'm going to take us backstage, Dylan. And Hyatt, would you like the timer?
Yes, please.
Okay, so wait till I get us backstage. Dylan, here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been giving some presentations over the last few weeks on trade shows and trade show marketing. We have been looking at trade shows from 30,000 feet, what to do before, during, and after. And then we come down to the 15,000 feet where we've been looking at the specific things within a trade show. So we are now going to look at the after trade show from the 15,000 foot level. Now, it starts at the very beginning. You want to be looking at what you're doing at the end, at the very beginning. You know, the old adage, start with the end in mind. Well, when you're going to a trade show and you are going to be selling left-handed widgets, then you want to be putting together your entire program from the very beginning, talking about left-handed widgets and how you are going to follow up with the prospects after the show. So now you're at the beginning of the end. The show is over. What do you do? Well, the old 80-20 principle unfortunately works in trade shows in the negative sense, that 80% of trade show leads are not followed up on. 80%, think of the amount of time, energy, money that you put into making a trade show happen, and statistics show that 80% of the leads you get at a trade show are not followed up on. Now, what you want to do is think of the end of a trade show as a cold call with the first 3 or 4 steps removed. Now, what am I talking about there? Well, those of you that are in sales that have been on sales presentations where the first call you go in and the gentleman or lady that you're presenting to has their arms folded, their legs folded, and they're looking at you. How did you get in here and what do you want? It's cold. It's truly cold. The second meeting, well, you may get to the point where, oh, it's you again. What were we talking about? They may unfold their legs, they may unfold their arms. And finally, the third time, all right, let's get down to business. That takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. And what you're doing with a trade show or an event is that you're eliminating those first 2 or 3 elements. They have self-qualified themselves at the show. That's a whole another element of the at show portion, which is open-ended question. How do you use if you're promoting left-handed widgets and that's on your banner and on your back wall and in your literature? Well, the people that walk by the booth, how do you use left-handed widgets? Who in your company is responsible for left-handed widgets? What application do you have for left-handed widgets? Where, who, what, when, where, how? You ask those open-ended questions, which requires the people that you address to give you something other than a yes, no. In fact, they can't give you a yes, no answer. They have to qualify or disqualify themselves. Now, they can qualify their company and not necessarily themselves. How do you use left-handed widgets in your operation? Well, I don't personally use them, but I know we use them. You need to talk to Sue or Harry or Joe. Fine, give me their contact information, and I'll go ahead and do that. So you have 2 levels of people. You've got the decision makers and you've got the influencers. And that it's crucial to know where they stand in the pecking order, if you will. Because let's face it, while the vice president of operations who signs the purchase orders or signs the contracts may not be there, his loyal lieutenant, the person that he goes to, it's his influencer. If his chief influencer says, this is what we need and here's what it costs and sign here, he's going to do it. So it's not necessary to talk to the end decision maker. If you talk to the right influencer, you're going to get to the end decision maker. And actually, those influencers may do this, and they may give you enough information for you to make a preliminary proposal or offering at that first pre-event meeting. How many times you walk into a cold call meeting where you can do that? By asking the right open-ended questions at the show, you're going to be able to come into that first meeting with information that they need. In fact, do it right. And if you're talking to an influencer at the show, when you go back to visit that influencer and follow-up meeting, they may have the other influencers, but they may even have the decision maker, or vice versa. If the decision maker is at the show and he doesn't really know the in-depth of your operation, but he knows he's got people that do have knowledge of that, then he'll bring those people into the meeting. So trade shows shorten up the sales process very, very demonstrably. I think that's the word. Anyway, moving forward, you want to establish a timeline and stick with it. It's Friday afternoon, folks. You give each prospect their very own CRM designation. Now, this customer retention mechanism that you're for every show, you want to set up a process for every category of people that are coming. You may have people from a company that you'd like to sell to, but they have no influence and they have no decision-making power, but you'd like them to know what you do. So you'll put them on a newsletter, or you'll put them on a regular, just a standard public release list. The influencers get a whole nother set of material. They get details, they get new product releases, they get however you market your products and services, as do the decision makers. And so you want to put each category of person into their own CRM program, because the follow-up for each may be slightly different. So you want to make sure that the right person is getting the right follow-up. Different strokes for different folks. But you need to have that established on the front end before you go to the show, so that at the show, you've got 3 categories to put them in, so that when you finish talking with somebody, you know which category they belong to, and you put them into that. You don't wait until after the show and you've got 15, 20, 25 leads, and then you try to figure out, was he in category 1 or category 2 or category 3? That's why the end has to be thought of at the beginning, so that when you get to the end, it's going to be like clockwork. You need to stay with the program until they either buy or they disengage. That's the beauty of a CRM program. If you know that your normal sales range for left-handed widgets is 5 months, and you know what you have to do at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, then you put that program together and you put them into that. And some may take the whole 5, some may buy early, some may say, hey, look, this isn't going to work. So you stay with it until they buy or disengage. And that's where that 80-20 gets flipped in your favor, and you get 80% buying rather than just the 20%. The other thing you want to do, again, this is ex post facto, is chronicle subsequent sales to their source. Now, if you meet somebody for the first time at the trade show and 5 months later they buy your left-handed widgets, then you need to credit, that needs to be known, so that the $10, $20, $30, $40,000 sale to that company or series of sales gets credited to you having been at the XYZ show. And even those that have known about you but go to the show and see you for the first time, see the right people because you've got the right people at the show. Source the sale so that as you propose subsequent trade shows to the marketing people and the management, they're going to say, yeah, it's a worthwhile investment. Here are a couple of examples. The blessing of a no. Had an equipment manufacturer who was in the oil patch, and he wanted to present his product, his downhole product, drilling product, to a drilling company. There was a particular trade show where that company was speaking, and all the speakers had the opportunity to be sponsored. Well, I had and it was $500 to sponsor them. I told my client, who was exhibiting, I said, sponsor them. One, you get your nameplate up next to them, and you get to introduce them. Well, after they made their presentation, the president of that drilling company and his entourage came by the booth for a presentation of my client's product. Well, guess what? After they made the presentation, the president of the drilling company said, we don't need your company. We don't need your product. The reason he had been so successful as a driller is that he was drilling in a state which did not require that piece of equipment downhole. Every other state did. That was an anomaly that he had found out. So he was saving money. So for a $500 sponsorship, he found my client, and I was standing behind both the president and the vice president of marketing, and I saw the blood just drain out of their faces when the president of the journal company says, "We don't need you. We don't want you." Yeah, it's not, So anyway, that's the one of the things that you can do at a show to help after the show. And the blessing of a final question. Here again, we were at a show, a prospect came up, and we hit it off well with them. We asked the open-ended questions, and they were excited. And we said, okay, well, we'll get back to you real quick with a proposal. And said, wow, we're going to have to put some work in there to do that. But you know what? We forgot to ask them, what is it you need from us? So we actually called them back, said, hey, thanks for stopping by the booth, but forgot to ask you this very simple question. What do you need from us? Well, they said, oh, we just need this. The answer was so simple. All they needed was one of the 5 or 6 pieces of information that we thought we were going to have to give them. Well, when we went back to make the presentation, how do you think we fared? We gave them exactly what they asked for in exactly the format. So those are things that can happen at a trade show. Also, go the extra mile. Once you've identified a prospect and you're working them, who do you know that they trust? Who else in their industry that you might know that might already be using your product or service? Go to them and say, hey, we're proposing a sale to the XYZ company, and we know you know the president, the vice president of marketing, whatever. Could you put in a good word for us? The worst they can say is no. Ask them for some intercession. And, that new approach may actually be more comfortable for them, and they may thoroughly enjoy doing that, and it puts you in a much better position. Okay, in conclusion, we're down to our last almost 30 seconds here. To paraphrase the old adage, this is the beginning of the end, but you got to have your ducks in a row to make it happen. Work your qualifying program at the show. So you put it together before the show, you're working it at the show so that after the show, you can stick with the CRM timeline and steps to achieve the results that you want from the show. You want to qualify results and source them and make selling future participation so much easier to your management. All right. Want to know more about how to make trade shows happen? Go to Amazon. Go look for 88 Successful Event Strategies. You can also join my That Ain't Not Right Use and Abuse of the English Language Weekly Missive. And with that, I will return control to Dr. Jacalyn. All yours, ma'am.
Great job, Hyde. How do you feel?
Oh, fantastic. It works.
Yes, you got the technology to work. That's always a great thing. One of the main takeaways for me, which I think is really important, having been in a sales career up until last year when I retired, is getting to that no as quickly as possible is so important, because we waste so much time and energy just playing this game with the prospective client, only to find out later that they're not interested, but they didn't know how to tell us. So asking the right questions, open-ended questions, getting the information, logging in a CRM package system makes a lot of sense. So all for it. How about you, Dylan? Any input you have for Hyatt?
Yeah, well, the things that stuck out to me, what you started with, which is that 80% of leads are not followed up with. And that really kind of blew my mind. And then your presentation revealed that it's really just a lack of structure for banking the leads and following up with them, as well as a lack of knowing the right questions to ask. And I agree with you, Dr. Jacalyn, getting to the no as quickly as possible. I can definitely improve on that myself in my own business. And the other thing that stuck out to me was, what do you need from me? Mm-hmm. Such an important question to ask in all facets of life.
You start with, how do you use this in your operation? Ask that open-ended question, And if they say we don't, or I don't know, well, fine, get out of the way so I can talk to somebody that does. And I do. I mean, I have fun with that.
Yeah.
My clients are absolutely flabbergasted, but the prospect laughs, you laugh, they go away, and you get to the next one.
I love it.
Hyatt, anything you want to just leave people with when it comes to trade shows, knowing that you're going to one next week and you're not afraid, right? There's no reason to be concerned. Every other procedures are being followed for people to get together in public, right?
Yeah. What I will tell you is that all of the trade shows are coming back, but they're coming back smaller. The show that we're going to next Tuesday, Wednesday in 2019 had 12 to 1,500 attendees. They're hoping to get 500 to 700 this time. I went to an event on yesterday, as a matter of fact, that they were hoping to get 100 people there, and they got less than 50. Now, they had a whole lot of people online, and it was a hybrid event. What I'm saying is you need to be very, very, very focused, because there's no fluff. And so get focused, because know that fewer people are coming and you need to influence them as best you possibly can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Gentlemen, we are going to take a quick break, and I'm actually excited. We've only played this once before. This is Frederica Crum, who is a mezzo soprano with the #1 song in the classic charts, and we're going to see a clip from her album. It's a Gershwin album, Somebody Loves Me, with James Pearson on piano. It's available on Amazon, iTunes, and Spotify. I actually purchased it myself. Let's take a look, and then we'll be right back.
I'm clutching at straws just because I may meet him yet. Somebody loves me, I wonder who he can be. Somebody loves me, I wish I knew. Who can he be? Worries me. For every man who passes me, I shout, hey, maybe you were meant to be my loving baby. Somebody loves me, I wonder who. Maybe it's you. For every man who passes me, I shout, hey, maybe you were meant to be my loving baby, baby. Somebody loves me, I wonder who. Maybe it's you.
listen to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio. We take business to the next level.
Welcome back to USA Global TV and Business Talk Radio. It's a pleasure to have you with us. You were just watching Frederica Crum and James Pearson, Somebody Loves Me, available on Amazon and iTunes. I did purchase the album. I'm so glad I did. It's phenomenal. And Frederica and James will be coming to New York, and they will be doing a concert, I believe, sometime in the fall. So do check them out. All right, welcome back. In our first segment, Hyatt Ives gave us a presentation on trade shows, his continuing series. And now we're moving on to Dylan James Levitt. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. And you'd like the timer, correct?
Yes.
All right. Hyatt, you and I are going backstage. Have a great lesson.
Good luck.
Thanks. So that was a perfect tee up, because today I'm here to talk to you all about how you can make your loved ones feel more loved, heard, and understood. And I'm going to be talking to you today about the value of listening in life. So I'd like to start with a couple questions, make it a little engaging. So if you're listening, who would like to be a better listener? You can just raise your hand at home. And how many of you believe that listening is a skill that you can get better at? And lastly, how many of you want to improve your relationships with your loved ones, friends, family members, and business colleagues? Well, if you said yes to any of those questions, then this presentation will be right up your alley. My name is Dylan James Levitt, and today I'm going to be talking about the value of listening in life. So before we get into the juice of it and the details of what listening is and how to become a better listener, let's start with a little bit of a self-assessment. So I want you to think about the closest relationships in your life. Mom, dad, best friends, loved ones, romantic partners, maybe business colleagues. Think about who is closest to you and your conversations with that person or those people. So in those specific conversations and the relationships with the people closest to you, how much time do you spend talking versus not talking or listening? Just kind of think about it. How much time do I spend doing the talking versus not doing the talking? In general, are you talking 80% of the time, 50% of the time, 20% of the time? Just take a moment to reflect on where you fall on this spectrum to give you a sense for how much listening you tend to do. Some people tend to do most of the talking and less of the listening, and some people tend to be the opposite. So be honest with yourself and just think about, maybe write down a percentage where you're at. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is listening even important? How does it make our relationships better? And how can one actually improve this skill? Because you hear it talked about all the time, be a better listener, but what does that actually mean? So those are some important questions, and it starts with understanding the difference between listening and hearing. Listening versus hearing. Now, we've all been in a situation where someone said to us, "You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me." And you think you've heard them perfectly fine. And then that only makes you be like, well, no, I am listening. And those conversations tend not to go very well. The classic example is when a couple is fighting and one person is upset about something and they're trying to explain why they're upset, and the other person hears them perfectly clearly, but isn't actually understanding what they're saying or what they're trying to communicate, maybe underneath the words. So hearing and listening are not the same thing. You can be on the couch watching TV and hear someone in the kitchen say, "Hey, could you do this for me later on?" And you're like, yeah, I got it. And then 5 minutes later, it's completely gone out the window. So hearing is simply actually hearing the words that somebody is speaking. It's just receiving the verbal content of their speech. Listening is the act of understanding the full message that they're intending to communicate. What is the person intending to communicate, both with the words, their nonverbals, their voice, and everything else that goes into it? And to understand this difference between listening and hearing a little bit more, think about a song that you've heard 100 times. And think about a time when maybe a lyric from that song has hit you for the first time in a totally new way, and you finally got what the artist was actually saying. And on that 101st time, like a light bulb went off, and you were like, "Oh my God, I actually heard this song for the first time." That's hearing. And that is the difference between listening and hearing. And when we really hear someone or something we like, we connect with the meaning and the message in a way that creates a shared understanding. That's a key phrase. We connect with the meaning and the message in a way that creates a shared understanding. Like, oh, I finally actually got that. Now, shared understanding is the key. In relationships, that's what we bond over. We're connected by a shared understanding of reality. And when someone is being heard but not listened to, what they're saying is that there's a message that I'm intending to communicate here that's not being received. And they're feeling like that message isn't getting across. And now it really comes down to each person's interpretation of the words being communicated and the nonverbal components as well, because we pass things through our subjective filters. So listening is the interpretation process. It's all woven into that. Listening is how you're receiving and interpreting the words and the other components to the message. So the question is, how do we listen for the full message? How do we get to that something deeper underneath the words? And how can we listen in a way that creates that mutual understanding and that shared understanding? Well, there are different things that we naturally listen for by default. So the question isn't, are you listening? But what are you listening for? Even as I'm talking now, think about, what are you listening for? Now, I'll go over a couple common things that people listen for when they're listening to someone else, when they're just on default in autopilot. The first one is listening for agreement or disagreement. This is the most common one. I see it both in myself and in other people. Do I agree with what he's saying? Is listening important? Or do I disagree with what he's saying? Do I not need to become a better listener? Or whatever it might be. Agreement versus disagreement, we tend to naturally scan people's speech for whether or not it matches our own thoughts, opinions, beliefs, etc. And it leads to responses like, "Oh my God, me too," or "I totally agree with that," or "I'm not sure about that. I don't agree with that. Well, what about this?" And that's a listening for agreement or disagreement. In this same category is listening for right or wrong. Is this person right about what they're saying? Are they wrong about what they're saying? And both of those are kind of an evaluative process. You're evaluating and thinking about, do I agree? Do I disagree? Are they right or are they wrong? And it creates, oftentimes what it creates is a defensive dynamic in the conversations. Because as soon as someone says something you disagree with or think is inaccurate in some way, which is only a matter of time because we all have different opinions and beliefs, as soon as someone does, you're now on the other side of the table and you're kind of going back and forth, and it feels like you guys are starting to oppose each other. And this is a common dance that we do. And it leads to conversations that often feel like more of like a battle or convincing or persuasion, like you're trying to get them to come to your side, rather than actual connection or understanding as to what's being said. And it leads to a lot of unhelpful conversations, meaning you don't feel like you get anywhere with the conversation because you're right or wrong, you're agreeing or disagreeing, and you're just on those opposite sides. The other common type of listening that tends not to work so well is listening for how to respond. You may have heard this before, listening to respond. This is when we're already beginning to formulate the response to what the other person is saying before they've even finished talking. And what often happens is someone has said something that makes us emotional, or we want to respond to a specific thing that they said, and then we're already starting to formulate that response to that one thing when there was a whole nother piece to the message that we're missing because we're now in our heads responding. And when we're already in our head trying to figure out how to phrase what we want to say before they've even gotten the chance to finish, this leads to responses like, well, yeah, but ... Or, yeah, well, you don't understand ... Well, oh, that's not what I meant. And then going on. And it leads to, again, a kind of offensive, defensive dynamic to a conversation. And listening to respond often creates one-sided conversations that just go in circles where you don't really feel like there's progress being made. So to recap, the three common types of listening that tend not to work so well to create connection and deep understanding are listening for agreement or disagreement, listening for right or wrong, and listening for how to respond. The other type of listening that's worth mentioning that I see a lot, and I don't think people truly get what they're doing, is listening for a commonality, where someone shares something and immediately you start talking about your own experience of that thing or a story that you have about that thing. Like someone's like, oh, I went to UMass Amherst, and you're like, oh, my brother went to UMass. He loved, and you start going on about your brother. Or like, oh, I grew up in Massachusetts. Oh, no way, my aunt's from Massachusetts. And you're like, I don't care about your aunt. And when we do this, we think we're relating and connecting with what the person is saying. But oftentimes, what we're not realizing is that we're taking the focus of the conversation from what they're actually saying and putting it back on ourselves. So listening for commonality, it can be good. It can make people feel related to, connected, like, oh, we share something in common, which is a big part of relationships. But when you do that just all the time, you often make that other person feel like they're less important because you end up talking about you without meaning to. So in order to actually listen in a way that creates that deep understanding and shared connection, it requires us to get out of the self-centric narratives about ourselves and tune into the other person's experience of what they're actually saying. So the tool to do this is curiosity, becoming very, very curious about not just what they're saying, but what's underneath what they're saying. What's really going on for this person? And what I call that is listening for understanding. Listening for understanding. So listening for understanding is listening for the underlying feelings the other person is sharing or experiencing. What's underneath the words? Is this person mad? Are they upset? Are they feeling lonely? Are they feeling insecure? Are they feeling tired or exasperated or frustrated? It's listening to someone in a way that helps them go deeper into what they're experiencing by the way that you engage and ask questions. So you might be listening to someone share about, how the pandemic has been, and they're kind of saying how they haven't gotten to see their family. They felt cooped up. They're bored. Instead of saying, oh, that sounds so rough, it's been a tough time, or something like that, you might say, wow, it sounds like you've been feeling really lonely and maybe even like a little bit trapped. Am I right about that? And then maybe they have, and they're like, oh, you know what? I have been feeling a little bit trapped, but they didn't really understand that until you said it. So it helps them pause and reflect and go deeper. And at the heart of listening for understanding is wanting to discover the other person's true thoughts or feelings or emotions and understanding what's actually going on. So I'll give you guys a couple like key phrases that you can use to practice listening for understanding and help create a little bit deeper connection in your conversations with anyone. And the first one that I use as a tool is thinking in the back of my mind, what is this person not saying? What's not being said? And having that kind of drive my curiosity and my interest. And then once they do share what they share, there's a couple key phrases that I use to kind of just repeat back. The first one is, it sounds like ... It sounds like you feeling a little bit lonely or trapped or whatever it is. It seems like ... And what I'm hearing is ... And that's where you're literally just reflecting back to that person exactly what they just told you. And it's amazing how simple this is and amazing how much it actually makes someone feel heard and connected to you. And it can actually help them uncover the deeper truth about themselves. And then they credit you for it. And all you did is say exactly what they told you. And it's beautiful. It opens up a whole new realm in your conversations. And I'll leave you guys with a couple questions to practice in your listening. Instead of taking the conversation back to you, try asking, what was that like for you? How did you feel when that happened? What did you experience, or how was that experience? Or what do you think is underneath that? Those are all questions one might ask if we're listening for understanding. So I'll leave you with the quote of, as Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand and then to be understood.
Woo-hoo! Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. You're a pro. That's
I appreciate it.
fantastic. I raised my hand all 3 times, by the way. And I thought that was really insightful in a lot of ways, because some of the things that you mentioned, I find that I've done myself. That comparative, when someone says, oh, I went down the shore. Oh, I lived down the shore. Really? What did you do? And then you realize, whoa, no. You're making it about you. It should be about them. I think we do that a lot, I think, just in general. And then also the other thing I got out of it is someone's talking and the whole time you're listening thinking, I don't agree with that. And then sometimes a light switch flips, right? Then you just disconnect. You're like, I don't believe that. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and I unconsciously start to kind of like just deny it almost.
Yes, and then I feel like sometimes there's judgment that comes up with that, right? It's like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not listening to him anymore, right? Or he's... So I like the ideas that you gave about how to turn it around to make it about the other person, to get them to open up and maybe acknowledge what they're feeling.
Thank you. I'm glad that landed.
Thank you. Well done. Mr. Hyatt Ives, what feedback do you have?
Oh, yeah, it's the open-ended questions. What I'm hearing is, and how did that make you feel? And where do you think that's going? I heard a quote a while back where waitresses and wait staff people get far greater tips when somebody places an order, says, I'll have burger, fries, hold the mayo. All right, let me see that I heard you correctly. You want a burger, fries, no mayo. Just repeating back to them what they said. And in fact, if you can mimic, burger, fry, and to heck with the mayo, so it's listening rather than hearing. You have to listen to be able to repeat back to them. When you're just listening, when you're just hearing, it's rolling off of you. When you're listening, you can repeat back to them, and that says to them, they are truly listening to me.
Yeah, they're fully present. I actually heard a podcast that quoted that exact study like 3 days ago. It's funny you mentioned that. And
It wasn't much longer ago. I think we probably were referencing the same study.
it was 80%. Their ticks increased by 80%. The only difference was they repeated back the exact order. I'm going to include that in this presentation, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Reminding me of that.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in sales calls and I first started, and I'd ask the prospect a question, and I wasn't listening because I had a whole list of questions. And I was like, okay, I'm thinking I got to get to number 2. Okay, I wish he'd stop talking so I could get to 2. Or you have the slides, and they're asking a question. It's like, no, I have 50 slides left. We don't have time for this. And meanwhile, as you get more experience, you realize, who cares? Like, just pay attention, follow where the conversation's going, and that's how you're going to connect with someone.
Exactly.
We've been in those presentations where the person that's doing that has 50 slides, and they just go from slide 20 to slide 49, and just they just say, okay,
and it's
I'm
all like,
you know where you want to be.
It's all a self-centric thing. What I realized is that, like, the big shift for me in learning this was like focusing on the audience, the person. Like, when I'm focused on myself, what my agenda is, how much time I have left, anything about me, I'm ultimately not connecting with that person. So for me, it's like focusing out is the key that drives all of this.
Good point. And I want to share this also. I think it goes the opposite way too, in that I remember, and I've shared this before, but I was in a very big sales presentation where we had come so far down this path, and it was, the stand-up team, and I was going to go first. And the executives were all in front of me, and they all had their phones. I was standing up there ready to give the proposal, and they're all on their phone. I just stood there. And finally, they looked up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm waiting for you to be present and listen to me." And by the way, I was shaking inside, but guess what? I got their attention. They put those phones down because otherwise they were just going to be hearing and not paying attention and listening.
Wow. Great story.
Thank you.
And, sort of an analogy to that, in a presentation, after you've made a presentation to somebody, the first person that talks is usually the one that's going to lose. And I was making a presentation that I wasn't in the strongest position, but I made my point, and I made it to 2 people: the executive that had the decision-making power and her assistant. Her assistant didn't know the rules of the game. We sat there in dead silence for probably a minute and a half. The assistant spoke up, and I I've won. and her boss knew it too.
Tug of war.
Sounds like the longest minute and a half ever.
Oh yeah. But I knew the rule, and there was not a word going to come out of my mouth. Period. End of statement.
Yeah, it's so true. I just was on a business call actually today, and the person wanted to sell me something, and they were coming hard, and I couldn't even get a word in edgewise, and I thought, you are not connecting with me on any level. So finally I said, may I speak, because I have something to say and I'd really like you to listen. So this person wasn't listening. They were hearing, and then they just started talking again. I thought, I have no interest in working with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My favorite quote one of my favorite quotes is, who you're being is screaming so loud, I can't hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
And sometimes we just meet people, you're like, do you not see yourself? Like, you're screaming so loud with everything that you're not saying. I just can't hear what you're saying.
Analogous to, how to snatch the feet out of the jaws of victory.
All right. Well, gentlemen, this has been a fun show. My other show is starting in 6 minutes, so sadly we have to wrap it up. But so, Dylan, great job, and let us know, how can people reach you? Remember, people are listening on the radio, so they can't see the banner, and who should be reaching out to you?
So the people that I want reaching out to me are any single men out there, any single men of any age who want to improve their relationships and find a loving, lasting, committed relationship. I work with single men and I support them in landing the woman of their dreams. I've just finished a new website, www.thesparkofattraction.com. Actually, Spark of Attraction, www.sparkofattraction.com. And on there, you can see a little bit about the things that I tend to help people with. So please check out that website and book a call with me if you're unsure, but you're feeling stuck and you just want someone to listen and hear what you're going through and see if they can support you. I hop on the phone with people, get to know them. And if I feel like I'm a good fit, then we can talk about packages. If not, you get a free 30 minutes of coaching. So hop on sparkofattraction.com, book a call, and I'll be looking forward to talking to you.
When can we find you on Clubhouse, Dylan?
Clubhouse, we do Mondays at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. If you follow me at Coach Dylan James is my social media, Clubhouse and Instagram, at Coach Dylan James. You'll see me post about it on Instagram, and you can grab the link.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Hyatt Ives, how can people reach you and who should contact you?
Companies that are looking to expand their trade show business, ones that have done trade shows, want to do them again and want to do them right and have them work for them. You can reach me at 832-372-6900. That's 832-372-6900. Or go to my website, HyattIves.com. It's HIETTIVES.com. And you can email me at Hyatt@HyattIves.com.
Thank you so much. This is a great show. I'm really glad you're both here today presenting lessons that are of extreme value. So I wish you both a wonderful weekend. And we are going to close out the show. Please come and join us in less than 3 minutes on Pet Psychic Amina. We will be right back with that show. Take care, guys. Thank you again. Really good work.
Thanks, Jacalyn. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.